The Last Jedi pretty much answers every question about Star Wars space combat, and it does so completely effortlessly and in a way that honors a ton of on-screen evidence in a coherent way. One big question that has come up a lot in regards to Star Wars is why do capital ships get so close to each other to exchange fire? Before we could theorize, but now we have a very definitive answer. Turbo lasers have a fairly low effective range against shielded targets.
They can keep at a range where our cannons are ineffective against their shields.
And we get a graphical representation of just what that range looks like. As long as its shields are up, the Raddus only needs to stay out of a relatively small bubble to stay safe. And of course, we do have previous evidence that range is a critical factor with Star Wars weaponry.
It would be as well to let it go. It's too far out of range.
Not for long. He's almost in range.
The Falcon's engagement range seems incredibly small, just like the effective range of capital ships is similarly small in both Return of the Jedi and Revenge of the Sith. It would seem that blaster bolts lose energy fairly quickly and are considerably less effective at even slightly longer ranges, so it goes to figure that capital ships that wanted to inflict meaningful damage on one another would need to get pretty close and risk entering each other's bubbles, as it were. At Endor, the Rebel fleet is really only at risk from the fleet of Star Destroyers after they engage at point-blank range, and the Raddus is only at risk at this range. Now, of course, shields are the deciding factor here. Without shields, these ships would still be vulnerable at longer ranges, but shields force ships to get up close and personal with one another. But not always, and that leads to another answered question. Why are fighters important in space combat? Well, fighters in Star Wars seem to have this really nifty little feature. They can fly right through shields.
Nothing can get through our shield.
And The Last Jedi is clearly deliberate in showing us exactly this. A turbo laser blast splatters on the Raddus's shields, while Kylo's fighter flies right past unhindered. Now, of course, there are different varieties of shields in Star Wars. The shields around Scarif and around the second Death Star were obviously invulnerable to fighters, but they also had the liberty of being generated by giant planet-side facilities. It would seem that even large starships were incapable of generating these impervious shields, and were therefore vulnerable to small craft. So this is likely why Anakin could easily enter the droid control ship hangar while the shields were up, and likely why this was possible while the Executor's shields were still up, and definitely why this was possible. Shields in Star Wars seem to be effective against energy, but vulnerable to physical matter. And here's another thing to consider. At long range, most weapons are ineffective, but at close range, large ships are super ungainly and can only hope to slog it out until someone hits a sweet spot. Fighters solve that problem by their ability to penetrate shields and operate within that lethal bubble at speeds high enough to evade heavier weapons. That's why when engaging a large, well-defended target, it's important to
Accelerate to attack speed.
And this is precisely why the first Death Star was vulnerable to a fighter attack, and why the First Order Dreadnought could be engaged in a similar way, and why it's of critical importance that large vessels have a significant fighter escort.
That puny ship is too small and to too close range. We need to scramble out fighters.
If you can manage to scrap a capital ship's entire fighter escort, it's essentially a sitting duck. In the Rebellion's attack on the first Death Star, there would have been virtually no danger if it weren't for its supporting squadrons of TIE fighters. Just like there was virtually no danger for Kylo and his wingmen to waltz up and destroy the Raddus's bridge. Now, there are likely still a few lingering unanswered questions, but I think it's pretty incredible how The Last Jedi took random bits of space combat from the entire saga and spun them together in a coherent way that actually had a bearing on the plot. This isn't just some hardcore fan service. This is using the rules of the world itself to craft its action, and I think that's really cool. What did you think? Did you see things differently, or did The Last Jedi bring all of this stuff together for you too? Let me know. If you guys like this video, make sure to subscribe for more and share this with your friends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.